Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us on our Rural Transformations, the Changing Rural Narrative presentation, hosted by the Rendezvous region and with our special guest, Ben Winchester from the University of Minnesota Extension. And we will also have a panel of newcomers that you can see on your screens right now, and we will meet them a little bit later. So first, we're just going to go over a couple things that the Rendezvous region does, and then we'll let Ben go into his talk about the changes that we've witnessed over the years. You can go ahead and put stuff into the chat. You can also do the Q&A with any questions. At the end of the presentation, we will open it up and let you turn on your cameras and your mics once we get to the end for the question and answer. So you can either write questions into the chat, the Q&A, or when we get to that point, you can go ahead and turn on your camera, raise your hand, and then we can get to you. So hopefully everybody can see my screen. I just want to do a quick overview, and as we're talking about all the great things that is rural, we wanted to go over some of the best things in our region, which for those of you outside of the region, we cover mainly the areas of Cavalier County, Walsh County, and Pembina County, so the very northeast corner of North Dakota. So the first thing we want to kind of hit on is our annual Best of the Rendezvous Region contest. This is where we have a community competition to determine who is our best of the best. It's a friendly competition that results in bragging rights. Jeremy on our panel, he used this, I think, last year as kind of a roadmap in his podcast, Rendezvous Region Today, to kind of get around the area and see things that you might not have experienced. So it's a great way to look at it like that. We'll do a brief overview of that. We also do some community murals, so I'll show you our progress on that. And then our latest initiative is Talking Trails. So we'll get right into it. So Best of the Rendezvous Region. Now, we have a lot of these, so I'm not going to go and say every single person, everyone. I hope everybody can just go ahead and look at their screens and see. But, I mean, we do want to highlight what is so great. So this picture is from Icelandic State Park. They actually won a lot of awards this past year. But on this one, they're the best campground and RV park. We had over 900 people vote, and that's the one that came up on top. We have the best fishing spot, best hunting, and best golfing. So a lot of things you can do outside. Next, we have recreational delights. So these are the best destinations. So as you can see, Icelandic State Park is kind of an overall best of the best. And then Frostfire Park is best winter recreation, especially this year with the skiing actually, being available and just them opening up runs they haven't been able to open up before. So this is just wonderful. And of course, who doesn't like a little puppy in the picture? And then accommodations and dining. The best hotel we got is Cobblestone Inn. That is located in Langdon. Best unique lodging, One Majestic Place. If you haven't seen it, you need to Google it because it is just beautiful. Best restaurant is Sporty's Bar and Grill. That one is in Langdon. Best breakfast, Bread Pan Bakery. And then best coffee shop, Sparky's, which is in Cavalier. So this is a picture of Sporty's. The local experiences and community favorites. This includes best shopping, best movie theater, our best festival or event. This is always very tight because we have so many great ones, but this year it was the Cavalier Motorcycle Ride-In. Best parade is 4th of July in Park River. Anybody that's seen it, that's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, that parade is fantastic. Best gym and best museum. Definitely ones you want to check out if you haven't before. Services and convenience. This includes car dealerships and repair shops, ag, because we are very heavy ag up here. Convenience store, that's the one in Cavalier. And then best grocery store is Hugo's in Grafton. Very tight race on that one as well. Lastly, we all love food and we all love friends. So the best burger, if you want that, hit up Sporty's. Last year was Bullmore Lanes in Park River, and this year Sporties beat out Best Food Truck. Hank's Ice Cream last year was Bourbon Barrel. This year, and Hank's was second. This year, Bourbon Barrel second and Hank's is first. Very, very close competition. Both are great. And and then the best bar or lounge is the 10th hole in Garter, and then best pizza is Sporties. So next, we want to just kind of touch on some community murals. We're trying to set a goal of doing 2 a year. Whether or not we're able to get 2 done is debatable. It's mostly based on finances, but we are trying. So we have 2 that are completed. And we have the one in Drayton, the catfish capital of the North. And then the more recent one is the one that was done in Walhalla. We have one in development in Langdon. Here is the app. This is the mock-up of what it's going to look like. It should be painted this summer. And then one that's in development in Park River. So that's what we're currently working on. We want to get as many of these done as we can. We just love bringing color and pictures to the area. Local art is always great. We try to work with local artists to get these done as well. Lastly, our last biggest initiative that we've taken on this year has been a really big one. It's Talking Trail. This is a large scale project that go throughout those 3 counties in Northeast North Dakota. And it's meant to talk about, stories that are interesting, history of the area, things that have significance to us. And here is what the signpost looks like. We weren't able to get all 40 up before the ground froze. We tried, but we didn't quite get there. There are some up, though. You can go ahead and download the Talking Trail app, and you can see all 40 listed there, or you can go to talkingtrail.com/Rendezvous Region, and all 40 are there. They are, stories, histories of like the Pembina County Courthouse. There's the history of cities, Cavalier and Drayton. One very interesting one is the Langdon County seat battle, and how Langdon won, and how there was a bunch of voter fraud, and it's just a really fun one to listen to. So there's lots of interesting ones, and we want this to be a way where people can get out, they can go and see the site, and then they can see the sign and hear an audio history. So you can either call when you're at the place, you'll see the sign. You can call and put in the talking point number. This is not one of ours. This is just an example. Or you can go to the website, or you can download the app, and all 3 of them have access. So you don't have to have a smartphone. You can still access this. The next part of this is going to be this next summer. We're going to do 40 more. So we're going to have 80 points total. It makes it the largest talking trail in the Midwest. I think there's another group that's doing 80 as well. So we might have to do 81 just to be the biggest anywhere. We just have to be the best of the best, right? There's opportunities to sponsor this if you'd like. But that's our big fun thing, to try to get everybody out, active, visiting places maybe they haven't seen before, and listening to these trails. You don't have to be at the spot to listen to the trail. You can listen to all of them just right on your phone. But we want to get people out and exploring. So that's a very short recap of what we do. Not everybody knows what Rendezvous Region does, so we just wanted to go ahead and start with a quick overview of some of the projects we do. And we had an event called the Annual Rendezvous this past winter in November, where we presented the best of the Rendezvous Region Awards. And Ben Winchester was a speaker at that event. With his presentation, because we were in a place that didn't have good internet service, he was not able to do a Q&A. So what we decided was this webinar. So if you've been following the Facebook event, the link to his full presentation is on there. I will also share it in the chat in a little bit. This is an expansion on that. So he's going to do a quick overview of what that talk was about. And then we're going to do our main event, which is our newcomer panel, where we can hear stories of, newcomers to North Dakota. So with that, I will turn it over to Ben.
Great. Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me okay. My name is Ben Winchester. I'm a rural sociologist with the University of Minnesota Extension. I think you know Extension is like the 4-H people. It's really a pleasure to be in Extension. We serve rural communities. It's really my love and passion. My whole life has been in academics, but it's trying to like make data consumable and understandable. And the premise behind all of my work is what I call rewriting the rural narrative. And the idea here is that many times we do have a terrible narrative about rural communities, small towns that our best days are behind us. Nobody wants to live here anymore. The lucky few escape. And but what I know is that since the 70s, we've had a consistent pattern of people moving in. People in their 30s, 40s, and 50s moving in to 98% of all counties across this country since the 70s. And really, I kind of get at this point that how do we arrive at this point that we have a terrible narrative about rural? But on the other hand, I can't find a home to buy. Like we're in super high demand. And during the pandemic, you guys probably saw this. There was a big light showing on rural America and everybody was like, oh, this is going to save us. And I was like, we already saved ourselves. We're full. And I think you know this, like during the pandemic, all it did was exacerbated the home values because the demand was already there. So we had more and more people that now had the opportunity to afford, to have their business or whatever it looked like, their family, to live in a rural community. This is not a new trend. It's not like a back to the land people. This is people who actually want to live in our rural communities. They're not all farmers. They're not all manufacturers. So we have remote workers today, and the economy looks different, right, than we used to have too. But we don't always know about that. So I'm not going to really do the presentation here today, folks. If you want to watch the full presentation, you can watch it. We've got the link on that registration page. We'll have a sign up for you afterward here. But the idea here is that we live in these bigger regions. We don't just live and work and shop and play in one little town. I was up in Cavalier in 2019 and I loved it. There's so much positive things going on up there. And it really, for me, reflected the new rural. And that we don't just live and work and shop and play in one place. We live in this whole region. So there's actually in the presentation, you'll see there's something called mega regions, that we live in these big regions, we commute in and out, and even these county boundaries, which is why I really like what you guys have done here in terms of bringing these counties together, because ultimately people don't just stop at the county boundaries and say, I'm never leaving, I got to work here, right? I've got to work and live and shop and play here because I work for the chamber, right? Or whatever that looks like, but really people live in these regions. So even on the commuting data, we know that, this data you'll see in the presentation, Cavalier County every day, like 414 people commute in, and every day 619 people commute out, and just 878 people live and work in the county. So you've got these people moving in and out all over the place. They're living in these vast regions. They're a part of nonprofit groups, and you probably know this. Actually, you might not know this, but ideally, there's lots of nonprofits. North Dakota has so many nonprofits, so many opportunities for people to be engaged and involved that it becomes a problem because you have so many people, so many groups. North Dakota has the highest demand for leaders in the country, meaning you have so many governments and nonprofits that require people to be leaders that it becomes actually problematic when let me find this number here. It's like 1 in 13 adults in North Dakota needs to serve as a nonprofit or a government leader. This is the highest demand, you in Montana, highest demand for leaders. So you actually have a very active, engaged community. So many times you have multiple communities inside of your town, right? You might have an older community that remembers certain types of groups, and you have a newer community that is engaged in their types of groups, and they don't overlap with one another. So if there's community building work to be done, I do encourage you to find ways to cross these generations. I love the idea of murals because they allow you to connect the past, the present, and the future and let you see where you've been, but also know that you're going somewhere. How are you going to invite people to move to your town if they believe your town is dying? If they really do, if you believe your best days are behind you, why would you market your place? Why would you invest any money in infrastructure? Why would you spend any money in marketing if you're dying, right? You're not. And you're not dying because all markers tell us that your jobs are filled. And on the other hand, you say, well, we have all these jobs that are empty. You're right. You have plenty of available jobs. And why is that? There's nowhere for people to live. You can't welcome in labor magically and fill all these jobs when there is nowhere for them to live. So we've done this applied research at the University of Minnesota that shows like 3/4 of our rural homeowners today are baby boomers and older. and there's a ton of turnover coming. So historically in the past, the older populations, normally 10 to 15, 25% sometimes, would move out of their home after retirement. When they move out of their home, which would be like a 4-bedroom, 3-bath place, and into a patio home, it opens up their old home for new labor to live. So there's this constant churn of people moving in and out or moving over. But right now we're kind of stuck. And why are we stuck? It's because all of the move over housing that the seniors have had in the past has been filled up. And right now there is nowhere for the seniors who have wanted to move over to go. So either they stay in their home, which then inhibits the ability for new people to move in, or they leave your community. And when they leave your community, they take their retail sales, they take their retirement dollars, they take their transfer receipts, and all of these things with them. And that's in that first presentation too. So we want to actually capture it. We want to keep our seniors. We want to provide equitable housing for everybody and want to ensure that we have an atmosphere that's welcoming for new people to move in. And so that is where we kind of get on this point of what is the experience of a newcomer, right? And a lot of times in our small towns, I'll tell you, we've done studies now for 20 years. And we go out and we find new residents to small towns. And there's always new people. If you think nobody is ever moving in, you're wrong. Go talk to your city clerk, go talk to your property managers, go talk to your real estate agents. There's always people moving in and out of all these communities all the time, but you generally don't see them because you might just see the people you recognize. Like there's John, right? And there's John's son. Oh, and John's son moved back. But every time there's John's son that moved back that you recognize, there's 3 other newcomer households that you don't recognize because they're not from there. What we have found in our research is that just 1 in 4 newcomer households are from that community. So that is like when my son grew up, moved away and came back, he returned to my community. That's just 1 in 4 people. But people know my kid because they know my family name, they recognize his face. But every time there's a newcomer household that's recognizable, there's 3 others that you may not recognize because they don't have that family name. They don't have that deep history with your place. So how do you actually welcome them? How do you engage them? How do you even see them? How do you even know they moved into town? Our basic questions that we've got. So there has been this consistent movement of people in. They're bringing a lot of jobs with them. They're diversifying their economy. They're involved in nonprofit groups that are different. So it used to be the Eagles and the Chamber, and now it's the North Central North Dakota Bicycle Club or whatever it is. Like it's all of these kind of interest-based and recreational and educational activities that people engage in today. So really, instead of living in like the negative narrative bar in the middle of nowhere, I actually say that we live in the middle of everywhere. You put your house in the middle of all these opportunities around you. So we actually do this exercise in extension that asks you to like take a map of your region and put like a mark where your home is and then a mark where you work and then draw boundaries around how far, and think about this, how far in the past year have you gone to shop and eat out in your region, right? And you know the Rendezvous contest you had showed all of these places. You had a lot of people voting on them because a lot of people get out and about. I lived in Hancock, Minnesota for quite a while, and we had Buddy's Bar and Grill there, but I did not want to eat at Buddy's every time we ate out. Like, right? I wanted to get out to all these other places that we have in the region. Like, it was good, but like not that good. So ultimately, what we had found is that people live in these vast regions in the middle of everywhere. They're involved differently, and we may not recognize them. But ultimately, we want to talk about how welcoming are we as a community. And why is that important? Because what we do know is that when we do these newcomer surveys and we find all these new people that moved in between 1 and 5 years ago. And one of the questions that we asked them is, do you believe that the community you moved to was welcoming? And a full 78% of newcomers said the community was welcoming, which is actually pretty good. We didn't know what to think. We didn't know what to define. And I was hopefully not going to be 12% or something like that. It was welcoming, but it was 78%, which is pretty good. There's another question we asked, though, which is, do you think that you're going to be living here in 5 years? And of course, we're not going to follow up necessarily, but when you're asking a newcomer that's moved somewhat recently, whether you see yourself here in 5 years, it's really getting at how is it going today? Like if it's not going well, you're going to be like, I don't really see myself here in 5 years. But if it's going well, people are like, oh yeah, I'm going to be here in 5 years. So what we had found is for those that said the community was welcoming, 86% of the newcomer households said that they are going to be here in 5 years, like almost 90%, 9 out of 10 households. But if those that responded that the community that they moved to was not welcoming, now less than half, it was 44% of those households say they'll be here in 5 years. Put another way, less than half are going to be here in 5 years. So if they've got local jobs, like your employer should be concerned about this because you cannot retain your labor. And if you can't keep your labor around, who are you going to have in your community long-term to build the future of your town? So this becomes super important for us. In better understanding, how do you welcome people in? It's what we call resident recruitment. So on one side, there's industrial recruitment, which is, we want to bring in a business. On the other side, it's resident recruitment. And what we find is that when we ask these newcomers why they moved into our small towns, they didn't say they moved in just for a job. In fact, it wasn't even in the top 10. They need a job, but it's not the reason why they selected your region or your community. The top reasons that people give is number one is a simpler pace of life, access to recreation, getting away from a commute, all of these little push and pull factors. Number two was safety and security, and that was especially high with people with children. And the third top reason was the low cost of housing. And that's kind of relative, right? You might be coming from the larger metro and the rural home is going to be much more affordable. So those were the top reasons that people ended up moving in, and they're all of these quality of life reasons. When we look at the economic reasons, they're in the bottom half. They're moved down. So as opposed to a work-life balance, people are actually trying to achieve a life-work balance. And we say life is first here. It is not work first people are trying to achieve. We still have hardworking, ethos, but that doesn't mean you're going to put that first these days. So now in a tight labor market, labor's got power to choose. Labor's got power to choose wherever they want to go. And what's going to differentiate one community from another? It's really everything but the job. It is how welcoming is your town? How involved are the people? Are they nice? I mean, these are basic questions. Or are they treated like warm bodies? Like, oh, you didn't really even know who I was. You asked me to join the EDA board? Like, you don't even know who I am. Like, getting to know newcomers is a real important piece of our work right now. So here in Minnesota, we have a number of resident recruitment initiatives, or what we call them. We have groups that are doing community development work to have like newcomer suppers or take newcomers out for a meal, or just trying to ensure that our employers have a retention rate. This is economic development. We are trying to ensure that our future workforce is going to stay here. So today we've got 3 folks that are here to share their story about their newcomer experience and what that looked like. And I think it's important for me to always hear from these newcomers, because you might hear a sliver of things that you hadn't heard, right? And if you don't know who these people are, you want to ask, why don't I know the newcomers in town? Generally, we don't have welcoming atmospheres anymore like we used to. We used to have like welcome wagons in the 40s and 50s, and they would like show up at your door. And now it's, you can't be, we have an era of privacy. You're not just going to get a list of new people in town and their phone numbers. So if you're interested in doing some welcoming work, I say, number one, find your newcomers. That's your real estate agents, your property managers, your city clerks for water and sewer hookups and shutoffs and things. They know exactly who your new people are. School districts, employers, they also know who they are too. But today we've got 3 folks here today, Jeremy, Melinda, and Kat. Just welcome today. We are going to spend the next 30 minutes roughly talking with them a little bit about their experience moving to rural North Dakota and how that went for them. So I think everybody's on board here. Is everybody good? Thumbs up? Ready to go? All right. Well, great. We're going to start here with Jeremy. If you want to introduce yourself, just number one, just welcome. Thank you for sharing your own personal story and your kind of journey through your move and how you got here. So tell us a little bit about, we're going to go one at a time through each of you, Jeremy, Melinda, and Kat. Talk a little bit about you, your family, and when did you make the move?
You got it. Sounds good. Jeremy Ratliff. I talk on the radio for a living. Lived in places all around the country, and 2 daughters, a wife. Wife teaches locally. Also has a cool job editing textbook as well, and girls loving living here. I will say the moved here maybe 3 years ago, and what I was doing for a living, which I still am doing, we made a cross-country move, and it was during the pandemic, so things were a little bit problematic, a little bit stressful, and we did make the decision to move closer to family, which is here in Cavalier. So we ended up moving here and committed long-term right away. Full honesty, I didn't know how that exactly would play out, and it has played out exceptional. And years into it now, we have absolutely no plans of moving, and love it here, love the quality of life. Love the people, love their, love being able to go to levers and have 4 to 5 conversations. I feel like every single time I go. So, yeah. So my experience has been fantastic, and I've been able to continue to do the job that I have always done. I've been able to do that remotely. It's been very easy to do from here. So it's been good. So nice to meet everybody else.
Great. Thank you, Jeremy. Melinda, hello.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Perfect. Sorry, I was testing out a new headphones. I'm doing what every other rural community person is I'm going grocery shopping in the big city today. So Melinda Padilla Lynch. I'm originally from Kansas City, moved here at the height of oil on Christmas Eve of 2011. So officially been here now 13 years. We moved here because we were desperate. We were out of necessity. We were looking for the American dream. All we wanted to do was really work, secure a house, and raise eventually a family. We didn't have kids at the time. One of the things that really surprised me about North Dakota was I actually bawled my eyes out coming across the highway because there was no radio station the way that we came up. I live in the southwest corner of North Dakota, very rural town. Living from Kansas City, which is a very urban metropolitan, I grew up in a very urban inner city. I actually had several people murdered in my class. We started off with 425 in my high school class and graduated with 175 because of the dropout rate, pregnancy, and the murder rate. So coming to rural Southwest North Dakota, where it's very much ag and rodeo, was a culture shock in itself. And so moving here, I thought, like every other oil person, we were just going to be here for a year, 1 year, and we're going to rat nest and get out of here. I will have to say that my journey has changed having children here, having a business now. We own 2 businesses. We own a construction business, and then I own a networking business for transplants women who move to North Dakota that just started because I have a huge heart now. My love for North Dakota has slowly grown, and now it's fully developed. But I will say I'm probably like most people who moved here at the height of oil, where we thought we'd be here for a year, wasn't really going to for sure what's going to happen. And then my love slowly grew as I figured out who I was in this new journey, in this new place. So I'm really excited to hear about other people's journeys, but I'm also really excited to share my journey because I feel like there's a lot of different personalities and point of views depending on where you live and what your point of view and what your perspective is. But I will have to say now I'm one of the biggest advocates for rural North Dakota that you could probably find, which if you would have told me 15 years ago, I would have laughed in your face. But my love has truly grown, and I'm excited to really get to know everybody else.
Great. Thank you, Melinda. Kat, hello.
Thank you. I'm Kat Mayfield. I was born and raised in the Pacific Northwest. I was in critical care nursing for 12 years, most recently in social services. I was headed into retirement and realized living on the West Coast was first and foremost too expensive. Everything is extremely expensive over there. And the crime rate was the big push for me to get out of the cities. I lived about 8 miles from Portland, Oregon. So literally, I had never been to North Dakota in my life, did not know a person. And my partner and I just started Googling things that were important to us, safe communities, favorable tax states, good economic opportunities, low cost of housing. And time again, the Google search kept coming back to North Dakota. And so having never been here, we found a home online from Washington State, bought the home sight unseen, and packed up our belongings and headed over here.
Exciting. It really is. I've talked to lots of people. It can be anxiety ridden, right, at the same time.
It was.
So, yes, it's this double-edged sword. Everything is very exciting.
But
Talk a little bit about.
A lot of people want to do that. They have that drive in them to make that change and do something different that they've not done. And we just, I feel very grateful that we had the opportunity to just actually do that.
Right. So in the year, talk a little bit, we'll go back and forth now. So we'll go Kat, Melinda, Jeremy. Talk a little, in the year before the move, like what kind of prompted this? Was there a day that you woke up and said, oh my gosh, something happened? Or, talk a little bit about that year before the move. Were the things pushing you away from where you were and things pulling you to where you talk a little bit about that, Kat? So if you could expand on that a little, thanks.
Yeah, it had sort of started coming on prior to COVID. COVID really pushed it, but prior to COVID, things had just gotten so crazy with crime, drugs, other things there along the West Coast, that I knew the older I was getting, that I needed to make some changes, not just financially, but for my own security. I was no longer feeling safe at home. And so that was a big part of it, I think. And then when things got real crazy over there during COVID, I just kind of pulled the plug and made the decision that this was it. I needed to make a change.
Super, thank you. Melinda.
Sure. We are like many other people across the United States when the economy crashed in 2008, 2009. We were scrambling. My husband worked for a multi-million-dollar construction company built custom homes for HOAs. And we noticed actually coming on pretty early. My husband got laid off in May of 2008, which was really weird for construction to be laid off in the month of May. And we were like, what's coming down the pike? And that kind of was a forewarning for us. My husband worked for the same company since he was 16, so it was like detrimental to him that he thought he was going to retire from this company. So when the economy crashed, he was going from job to job. He would work for a company for 6 months, leave it, work for a company, leave it for 6 months. So for him, that stability and that continuity of a everyday security was so important. So when we started researching, kind of like what Kat was saying, places where the economy was strong. We really honestly didn't know about the oil boom up here. We had no clue. We didn't know there was other jobs other than we were on Craigslist. I'll tell you how old I am. And we were looking at jobs in Bowman, North Dakota just popped up. And we talked to this guy with a really strong accent. He kept saying, oh, don't you know that's Plum Right? Don't you know? And I'm like, who is this? I'm like, how far north are we going? We literally pulled into this town not knowing a single soul. And we pulled in the town with literally $100 to our name. I wrote a check that I literally could not cash because we were dead broke. I mean, we were spending every last bit of savings just to get up here. And we were in massive debt. And so for us, that was really what drew us here, was that building up of like desperation and necessity. But I think that could be your journey. But to me, that is a lot of people's journeys coming to North Dakota. But really finding home is the different aspect of what the beauty of North Dakota really does offer, is that rural sense of like you can have the American dream, in a sense of what does that dream look like for you. And so really North Dakota gave us a stopping place of really asking what our values are and really resetting what is important to us. And that's why we decided to start having kids here in North Dakota and not moving back. And that was a really big pivotal point for us.
Thank you, Melinda. Jeremy.
All right. So similar to what Kat had to say, the COVID situation kind of pushed us in this direction fast. So when we talk about the 1 year before, there was no 1 year before, just because it was a decision that was made very fast and kind of a little bit of a stressful situation for us. But it was a very it was a very difficult decision, but like I've said previously, since we've been here, we've just absolutely loved the quality of life. During the pandemic, when things were a little bit stressful nationwide, it was nice to kind of come be close to family. And the one thing that I will point out was Cavalier was not new to us. So that is one thing I should probably, because yes, I mean, it was kind of like a, hey, surprise, here's what we're going to do. This is a little bit outside of our character and our decision making, but we are just going to pick up and move to North Dakota. I will say we did talk about it before. We have talked about the option because, once again, there is family here. We did love it here. We loved coming to visit. But in the back, especially me, kind of selfishly, in the back of my mind, when my job is talking, on the air and with a specific company and in specific cities, it was a little bit scary to think of what happens if I leave this? What happens if I leave that comfort zone? And pleasant surprise, I've been able to continue doing it. Have met a lot of awesome new people. Have found some new opportunities, including the podcast, where while I'm talking in another market, I can also now talk to people in this market. So yeah, it's been that's been a great experience. But to answer your question in short, the just like with Kat, the COVID situation kind of pushed it, where it was like, all right, we're going to make a decision.
That's great. Talk a little bit about, if you could, talk about things that were maybe on your must-have list as you approached the move. Things like childcare, broadband, housing. Talk about how did those go on your must-have kind of checklist? Well, Jeremy, we'll start back with you and then Melinda. Okay. Jeremy.
It's that's that's a little bit of a hard question to ask, so I'll ask it a little bit of a different way. Just because we moved so quick, that it was a little bit. I mean, there wasn't quite as much. All right, we need to line up a house, or we may need to line up X, Y, and Z. Now we have family here, and we knew they were there, so it was a comforting, welcoming safety net in a stressful situation that allowed us to kind of come down here and assess the situation, assess the home situation, find something. And so when I say I'll answer it a little bit different, home prices were shockingly more affordable here in North Dakota. And that was more than a pleasant surprise. That was like, call up my friends and family and say, you should probably move here. And it's a lot easier of a pivot, especially if you're in a scenario in your life where you're planning on retirement or something like that. It's like, oh my goodness, there's that opportunity. And there also was some other opportunities as well, including a building that we purchased in town and have been able to do kind of some cool things with that. That's an opportunity that I couldn't do in the city that I was living in. I could not do it. And the thought wouldn't have even crossed my mind. It just would be, this is not possible. And when we moved here, it's like, oh my goodness, this is possible. And now we bought it. And oh my goodness, there are some things that we can do. So kind of a lot of cool possibilities on that. But yeah, so like I said, I didn't really answer the question that straightforward because we didn't really have the full year or long period of time to kind of sort it out.
That's right. Great. Melinda.
Sure. We came again at the height of oil, so we were just happy to have a home. Honestly, like when we moved to Bowman, there was 3 houses for sale in the whole town, and it was a bidding war over every house. We had no idea where we were going to stay. Thank God my husband's company he came to work for was a construction company, and one of his coworkers had a 1-bedroom studio part. It was like a studio apartment under his house. The shower was like one of those ones where you turn, but the thing was that we were so grateful for that because we knew what we were walking into was that there was no housing. We had heard, rent for 1 bedroom in other communities were going for $1,000, $2,000. So we were coming in a very different time. I will say that I was just happy to have a place to live, but we only paid $450 a month for our rent, and that included all of our utilities, our internet, and everything. So without that year for us to rat nest, we would have been in a very different place. Like that really gave us, like I mentioned before, a really time to sit back, take point of value, get out of debt, and really start what was important to us was we were able to buy a truck with cash. We were able to get, some things taken care of. And if we didn't have that, that wouldn't have happened. I really think about the people who move up here without literally any connections. I'm grateful for my husband's job that had those connections. But it was very weird to me that my husband's job was willing to help us find housing. That was just like, what? And the other thing too is when we first got up here, I had researched the town as much as I could on Google, which, in a rural community 13 years ago, there really wasn't as much on the internet on these rural communities. They're gotten better. But I will say, like, I got here at Christmas Eve, 1:30. At 2 o'clock, they said, you better hurry up and get to the grocery store. Your grocery store closes. Well, I'm from Kansas City. Everything stays open. That like blew my mind that we had 30 minutes to go grocery shopping. And then they told us go down the street and take a left at Wendy's. Oh, I was like, oh my gosh, they have a Wendy's here. I didn't even know they don't have a McDonald's or anything. Well, no, it's a bar here, Windys. So understanding that, like, for them, they're just like, take a left at Mr. Johnson's. And I'm like, where's Mr. Johnson? And we circled that block 10 times. And I think we finally got to the grocery store at 1:50 because we were driving a 1-mile town for 20 minutes. So I think understanding, like, for me, I was just happy to have a job. I was just happy to have housing. And I think sometimes North Dakotans don't realize when people are moving here, they're not necessarily running from something, they're coming to something. And I think that is so important for North Dakota natives to remember, like, we are just grateful sometimes to come to a place where our kids can go outside and play. We have an option to buy a home. We can run a business. One of the best things about North Dakota is they love small businesses here. And so one of the things I really want to reiterate when you talk about, like, looking for what we needed, we were just grateful to have a home, warm water, and we were able to get out of debt. And that was so important. And so sometimes understanding, like, those simple values are really what every person truly does desire.
Thank you, Melinda. Yeah, same question. On your to-do list or must-have list.
Sure. So I did actually research for about a year straight before moving over here. But again, having no destination when I first started this, anywhere in the United States was open to me. So I did actually have a list of the things that I was looking for. First and foremost was affordable housing. Coming off the West Coast again, the housing prices over there are incredibly insane. So I did own my home. I was able to sell my home over there for a premium price and move over here for much less, pay off all of my debt moving into retirement. So that's a really secure feeling that sometimes you have to uproot those roots and make that move in order to make that happen and make some choices. But first and foremost, it was the affordable housing, and second would be the safe communities. Again, just being able to wake up and walk out and know that your car is still in your driveway. That's something that a lot of people take for granted in the small towns that you don't if you're from a bigger city. You can appreciate those things. And so those two things, first and foremost, were priority, with the third being economic opportunities, job availability, and resources within at least a commutable distance. And then finally, coming from the West Coast, where it is very beautiful, I wanted somewhere that had good recreational opportunities, rivers, streams, trees, and it is beautiful over here.
This is great. I'll just pick up on one thing around the housing piece. So I had mentioned earlier that our research has been consistent that roughly 1 in 4 newcomer households are from that community, and 3 out of 4 are really not from there. But during the pandemic, that number actually went up. The percentage of households who were from that community went up. And we didn't quite know why. Did you have more returnees as opposed to people coming in from the outside? And it was directly related to housing. You could not find a home unless you knew somebody. So it gets back to, like, how do you acquire a home during the pandemic? You have to visit with your seniors after church. Like, that is the #1 place to go to find a home to buy. What we did found, just real briefly, is that 40 to 60% of home sales during the pandemic were not stranger to stranger. Like, they're called arm's length transactions. They were not. They were like, hey, Jeremy, I know your mom is looking to sell her home next. We always loved your mom's home. We're going to take you out for supper and we're going to get this done. That's how they went. 40 to 60% of home sales during the pandemic were like that. So ultimately, if you want to have an advantage to anybody moving in, help them find a home. That's the #1 avenue in. So I just want to mention that the housing is such a crux of really all this work that we do. So tell me a little bit. We'll kind of go back now from Kat up. Let's just do a brief one. Can you use 3 words to describe your experience so far?
I would have to say welcoming first and foremost. We were really welcomed warmly to the community here that we're in. And so I would say welcoming has been the top one. Culture shock. It's been a little bit of a culture shock. You know, things are a little different in the Midwest than they are along your coastlines. So that would have to be the second. But it's been good culture shock. I'll put it that way. People are so friendly here. Where I'm from, they're more standoffish. People tend to, kind of keep to themselves, and they don't really get out in their communities and associate together. But they do here, and so we're really enjoying that. And let's see, for the third word, Um, I don't know if it could be summed up in one word, but I'm getting used to being able to travel to all of the different little towns depending on what I need. So I don't know if there's a cumulative word for that, but you may go to this town because you're going to go to the bakery, and then you'll go to this town because you want to go get your hair cut, and then you'll go to this town. And so that has been an interesting experience since we've gotten here.
That's interesting, like recognizing the interdependence of the region,
Yeah,
right? Something
yeah.
like that. Yeah. No, that's great. Thanks. Melinda, three words.
Three
Describe how it's
words.
going.
Sure. I would say winter. I absolutely love, I mean, when you talk about North Dakota, you can't not talk about winter. But I would say for me, I've learned to love winter. I know people are probably shocked by hearing this, especially after this last week. But to me, winter is the great equalizer of North Dakota. It slows everybody down. Everybody has to take a pause. And that's probably my next word is pause. But with winter, I've learned to love it, and I've learned to embrace it. And I've learned to really enjoy the slowness of that. And I would say my next word is pause. I would feel like North Dakota has really become a pause for a lot of people, where they really have to take a step back and reevaluate what they want to do, rest, because you don't come to North Dakota just like haphazardly. Like, you have to literally make a point to come here, and you have to like really think what you're doing here, and everything is strategic. Like for me today, driving 76 miles to go pick up groceries for my family. Not that everything is very thoughtful and in that. And I would say, culture shock, like Kat has said, I grew up in a Midwest state, but it's a very different when you live inner city, urban, comparing to a Midwest state where my whole county where I lived at was the whole population of North Dakota. So understanding like that culture shock of like how spread out things are and how far you will have to drive for resources. But I absolutely love those drives. I love the pauses. It gives me a chance to really reevaluate and reset. I feel like I'm a better person, a better wife and a better mom because I take an hour and a half to go one way and really think about it. And I literally turn everything off, and I just sit and enjoy the prairie and enjoy like on windy days, the amber waves of grain. It just is absolutely beautiful. I think we kind of forget sometimes what beautiful country we do live in, and we just talk about like the negative side of it, but there really is a beauty to it. And I would say, the Northeast corner, I love visiting the Northeast corner. It's absolutely gorgeous. I know I'm a huge fan of the Walhalla area. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And I think knowing that North Dakota has all these beautiful places, I think North Dakota needs to talk about that and brag about that more, that we are such a vast topography of a state.
Thank you, Melinda. Jeremy.
All right. So I'll say number one would be friendly, just from I'd say the people, especially here in Cavalier, the people have been amazing, welcoming, warm, helpful. I joke with some of my friends here in Cavalier that I don't really know how to do much in life other than talk on the radio or work. I've worked in the radio and television and the entertainment industry, in news, obviously. So because of that, there's not a lot that I can do as far as like, changing a car tire or changing my oil or whatever. And in small towns, a lot of the people that I bump into, they can do everything. They have a whole assortment of skills. But the key the thing that I love the most about that is they are able to help out a helpless person like myself. I go back to the time where I made a completely stupid mistake blowing snow and got the John Deere stuck by my house. Ridiculous mistake, super embarrassing. And a friend showed up in just a few moments, pulled me out fast. And I'm like, how much do I owe you? Like, what do I? He's like, he said something like, we're North Dakotans. This is what we do. And I'm like, all right, this is the best. I should have moved here a long time ago. Second thing I'll say, quality of life. I love that my kids can ride their bikes to the local pool. They can go off and meet with friends. They can walk to their grandparents' house, and I don't worry about it, which is really, really cool. And then one curveball I'll throw out for the third thing is productive, because I've noticed my productivity has skyrocketed since moving here. And it's something that you wouldn't necessarily think possible if you move from a bigger city to a small town. But living in a small town like Cavalier, for example, I could walk to the school here if I need to go to the school. I can walk to the car dealership. I can walk to my studio. I can walk. It's a multiple second drive to the gas station. It's a less than 2-minute drive or something like that to the post office, to the bank, to the supermarket here, Levers. So because of that, if I am like I am as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to meet somebody to do an interview, and then I'm going to go to the bank, and then I'm going to get my kids after school. But these are all things that I can do in a few minutes, as opposed to, this big, long amount of time where it's like, okay, it's going to take me 25 minutes to get to that side of town. Up, it's rush hour. Now it's going to be 45 minutes to get from the east side of the city to the west side of the city. Here, it's just like, if I can't walk it, it's like a 2-minute drive for most of the places that I go.
That's fascinating. This is super interesting. We've got about 7 minutes here. I've got one final question. Briefly, and then we'll open up for questions. So if you've got questions, you want to put them in chat, we can get those right away. If not, feel free to unmute yourself in a second here. But number one, just thanks for everything you've shared here today to our panel. It's just fascinating to hear some of these stories. Everybody has a different story, and you all are moving for hope and opportunity. And I just want to undergird this, that nobody is moving to your towns for pity. Nobody is moving to their town for failure. Right? So when we talk about our towns, I want them to be full of hope and opportunity, because that's what you're hearing today. So I would like our guests here to share one final thing, and that is with other residents or other leaders in your towns. What would you say to them to help them welcome in this next generation, maybe in an easier way? What brief advice would you have for them? And we'll go back to Jeremy, Melinda. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a little bit hard for me to give advice just because I am on the Chamber of Commerce here. And I do work with, I do work with a lot of local leaders here as well. So if anything, they probably could give me a little bit better advice on kind of how I fine tune what I'm doing. But just in short, I think one thing to just hit over and over as far as anybody, especially in the community that I'm living, is just that quality of life factor. And it's the fact that I have a family in southeast Wisconsin that every 4th of July season, they come here. They come here for the Pembina County Fair. They come here for the fireworks. They could stay where they're at. They're roughly between Milwaukee and Chicago, and see the most amazing fireworks displays, in their entire region, and just be wowed and do all that stuff. And, but they come here. They come here. They go to Icelandic State Park. They just love it. It's just such good quality of life. It sells itself. So I think it's always worth us, me being on the Chamber of Commerce, reminding people of that, and not necessarily, weighing all the pros and cons, but that's such a big pro. I think it's worth kind of hitting over and over.
Interesting. Thank you. Melinda.
Sure. I'll try to make it brief. 2 things I would say really quickly is not being afraid of anything that new arises, new people, new ideas. I would say to leadership, there's a way to skin a cat, several ways to skin a cat. But when you go up to someone and say, I don't know who you are. Why are you new to my town? That's very intrusive. And a different way you could ask that is like, what attracted you to Cavalier? And you're still going to get the same answer, but it's a lot more welcoming and a lot more inclusive conversation instead of like, this is my town, what are you doing in it? And also it doesn't make the new person feel like they made a mistake, because when a resident is asking, what the heck did you do to move to North Dakota, or why are you moving to my town, the new person question their sanity of like, what did we do? Oh my gosh, why? When the residents are doing that. And I've had people come up to me and say, I don't know you, why are you in my town? And I'm like, oh, better way of coming up to me is like, I haven't had a chance to meet you yet. Welcome to so and so. What brought you here? What attracted you here? And then you're going to hear all the wonderful aspects of like why someone journeyed here. I would say those are my two biggest advice to leadership, is helping your community members change the verbiage of how you ask those questions. And it's a culture shift, and not being afraid of something new or new people arriving and thinking that they're all have some kind of conspiracy coming in to take over.
That's great. One of my favorite lines is newcomers hearing, like, why would you ever move here? That number one, like, what's the implication behind everything there? So anyway, Kat, last question for you.
Sure. In the community I moved to, I felt very welcomed. We actually did have a couple ladies that showed up at the door with packages that had a lot of information, local information as far as utilities, people that were plumbers, electricians, tree service, any of these little things you might need. That was very helpful when we first moved here and literally knew nothing. Our neighbors were also very good and very gracious to us and very welcoming. They came out, introduced themselves right off the bat, wanted to know how they could help us get settled and established. So I appreciated that a lot. As far as the community leaders go, I think playing off of what Melinda was saying a little bit, I think it is important to get the message out there that a lot of us, especially myself being older, I'm probably the older one on the panel here, coming over here, to not be afraid of, people aren't looking to change the way of life over here. A lot of us are actually looking for that way of life, and maybe remember that growing up, and where we're coming from, it isn't that anymore. So, a lot of us newcomers aren't looking to come in and make changes, so to speak, but maybe are trying to just integrate and be a part of.
That's great. I really want to thank you three for sharing your personal messages here. I think it's important that we sit and listen to the experiences that people have and try to put those together and better understand how we can better improve our communities. There was a question here about welcoming ideas. We do say, there's a colleague of mine, we call it the best $150 ever spent, but have a newcomer supper. Have a meal just for newcomers, not for all the existing residents to gawk at all the new people. It is only for the new people. And the number one outcome out of a newcomer supper is newcomers saying, I can't believe I'm not the only one. Newcomers feel very isolated because they do believe they're the only ones, and they're not. They're actually, you have people are moving in all the time. So I will say that, or grab a bite. Meals are a great way into that. But really thinking through the journeys that people are taking and understanding what that looks like, I think becomes important for how to capitalize on that. So I'll turn it back over here. If we've got any more questions, feel free to unpop on here, but I'll turn it back and we'll see how it goes. So thank you, Angelle.
Yeah, we have a few questions in the chat, and then I did allow everybody to turn their cameras on, unmute. Just raise your hand if you could, just so that we can try to keep it somewhat in order. But I'll just start with the chat questions. So the first one, what could we do as rural communities to welcome new residents and businesses? And we've kind of spoken to this, so would anybody on the panel, I guess, like to add anything to this? Or do you think we covered it pretty good?
I think creating a welcoming program would be really helpful for every rural community. And I think almost doing a regional approach of like, this is your resources in your area, and remembering when I think rural communities could do a better job of remembering that not everybody knows where everything is. I don't know how many, I worked for the city for 6 years, and people would come in and they'd be like, I'm here to do my tags. And they're like, no, that's over at the courthouse. And remembering that not everybody knows all these little tidbits. And so like one of the ideas I put in the chat is creating a welcoming video and then just listing someone, like if you need your driver's license, they are here on Wednesdays. And if, you know, like remembering that welcoming essence instead of having everybody go to a website, greeting them in a universal video, that is more welcoming than saying, oh, just go to the website and check it. Just remembering that not everybody knows where everything is in Mr. Johnson's house on the corner who lived there 100 years ago. We don't all know that.
Yeah, and Northeast North Dakota is working on a regional initiative called Real Good, because life here is real good, and part of that is to kind of bring the information together and welcome newcomers. And yeah, so the next question, this one's for Kat. I missed your location. General is fine if you haven't stated specifically. So I'm guessing this means your current location. Maybe you can do this and where you're from.
Sure. So originally I'm from Vancouver, Washington. It's about 8 miles north of downtown Portland, Oregon. And I moved to Grafton, North Dakota.
And then Dustin said, give a gift basket, welcoming people to town with a list of services each business provides with coupons or gift certificates. I know when my mom moved to St. Thomas, she got a little welcoming thing. She got a shirt for the school that was actually about to be torn down. So who all got that? Kat, you said you got a welcoming basket. Are you?
I did. There were a couple of little free samples from some businesses here and some coupons for the businesses. And like I said, there was a lot of lists that they had comprised of all the local services, and it was very helpful.
Okay. Right, next question. Was the conservative bend of the state part of your decision? So I don't know if anybody wants to take that.
I'll go first and say absolutely not. Either way, I found it to be a fairly good mix over here, actually.
Melinda or Jeremy, any comments?
I would say my husband's a lot more conservative than I was. And for him, at that point with him losing his job, I was looking for a place that he felt like he could be himself and that he felt like he could fit in. And I feel like North Dakota is a very blue collar state and work ethic is very highly important. It's like one of the highest values here. And so for us, the conservatism and the work ethic were two of the biggest attractions for us to move here. For me, I'm a lot more flexible with finding a job, and I have a little bit more diversity with my background with skill sets. So for him, that was really, really, truly important. And I've learned to find my own niche in North Dakota with my own values and with different people who may agree with some of the things I think. But it was a value set that my husband wanted for him.
No comment, Jeremy?
Well, I will say, so I work in a profession where talking about news on the air, I could probably live anywhere just so long as there is. I mean, obviously I can't give public political opinion because of my position. But with that being said, anywhere in the country, I would be able to live and cover politics potentially, I guess. But as far as here, once again, going back to the original reason we moved here was family. So that would trump any political reasoning or whatnot.
All right. Well, I don't see any more questions in the chat. I don't see anybody's hand raised. Last chance, everybody, for questions. I know we're just a little over. So seeing none, I just want to thank everybody for joining us. Really, thank you again to our panelists and for Ben for coming back on. And yeah, I think it was very informative. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.